I stood behind that marble pillar at my son's wedding reception, listening to my new daughter-in-law tell her friend she was going to have me committed to steal my beach house. I walked straight to the bar, ordered a double whiskey, and smiled at everyone like the perfect mother of the groom. What happened next changed everything. If you're watching this, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from, because this story is about to get wild. The grand ballroom at the Riverside Country Club looked like something out of a magazine. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over 200 guests, and my son David looking handsome in his navy tuxedo. At 63, I should have been the happiest mother alive. Instead, I was hiding behind a pillar, eavesdropping on my brand new daughter-in-law. "The plan is simple," Jessica whispered to her maid of honor, champagne flute in hand. "We give it 6 months. Maybe a year. Document everything. When she forgets names, when she repeats stories, when she seems confused, then we have her evaluated." "Isn't that a bit harsh?" the friend asked. Jessica laughed. "She's 63 and alone in that big house. It's actually mercy. Plus, David deserves that beach house after everything she's put him through." My blood turned to ice. The beach house, the one my late husband Robert and I bought 30 years ago. The one where David learned to surf, where we spent every summer, where Robert proposed to me 45 years ago. I stepped back from the pillar, my heart hammering. Jessica caught my eye across the room and waved, that perfect smile plastered on her face. I waved back, because that's what mothers do at their son's wedding. We smile and wave and pretend everything is wonderful. But let me tell you something about pretending. I've had 63 years of practice. David appeared beside me, loosening his tie. "Mom, you look pale. You feeling okay?" "Just tired." "Sweetheart, it's been a long day." "Well, Jessica wants to talk to you about Christmas plans. She has some ideas about traditions." "I bet she does." "How lovely. We'll chat later." David squeezed my shoulder and headed back to his bride. I watched him go, remembering the little boy who used to build sandcastles with me, who cried when he scraped his knee, who promised he'd always take care of his mama. That little boy was gone. In his place stood a 32-year-old man who'd spent the last 6 months defending a woman he'd known for 8 months over the mother who'd raised him alone after his father died. I walked to the bar and ordered that double whiskey. The bartender raised an eyebrow. "Rough day?" he asked. "You could say that." I took a sip, feeling the burn. "Tell me, do you believe in karma?" He chuckled. "In my line of work, ma'am, I've seen enough to believe in everything." "Good answer." I finished my whiskey and set the glass down, because I have a feeling it's about to make a comeback. 3 months earlier, David had brought Jessica home for the first time. She was everything you'd expect a man to choose. Blonde, 28, with one of those smiles that could sell ice to penguins. "Mom, this is Jessica," David had said, practically glowing. "Jessica, this is my mother, Margaret, but everyone calls her Maggie. Mrs. Cooper," Jessica had gushed, giving me one of those too tight hugs. "David has told me so much about you. I've been dying to meet the woman who raised such an incredible man." Even then, something felt off. Too polished, too perfect, like she'd rehearsed it. "Please, call me Maggie. And it's wonderful to meet you too, dear." We'd sat in my living room, Jessica complimenting everything from my antique vases to my choice of coffee. David hung on her every word like she was reciting poetry. "How did you two meet?" I'd asked. "At the gym." David jumped in before Jessica could answer. She was struggling with the weights, and I offered to help. "How romantic," I'd said, though something about his eagerness to answer for her bothered me. Jessica had laughed. "David's being modest. I wasn't struggling. I was pretending to struggle. I'd been watching him work out for weeks, trying to figure out how to talk to him." At least she was honest about being calculating. "And what do you do for work, Jessica?" "I used to work in social services, helping families navigate difficult situations, but I'm transitioning into wellness coaching now. Social services, mental health evaluations, difficult families. I should have paid more attention to that red flag." Over the next few weeks, Jessica became a constant presence. She'd show up for dinner uninvited, rearrange my kitchen to be more efficient, and offer unsolicited advice about everything from my garden to my finances. "You know, Maggie," she'd said one evening while doing dishes I hadn't asked her to do. David mentioned you handle all your own investments. That must be so stressful at your age. I've been managing money since before you were born, sweetheart. Of course, I just meant with all the new technology and market changes. Maybe David could help take some of that burden off your shoulders. David, who'd never shown interest in my finances before Jessica arrived. David, who'd asked me for money 3 times in the past year to cover his credit card payments. I appreciate the concern, but I'm quite capable. She'd smiled that perfect smile. Oh, absolutely. I just worry about you being all alone in this big house. Alone. Like it was a disease. The worst part was watching David change. My son, who used to call me every Sunday, who brought me flowers on Mother's Day, who'd spent hours helping me clean out his father's study after the funeral. Suddenly, he was too busy for Sunday calls, too tired for our monthly lunch dates. Jessica thinks we spend too much time together, he'd told me when I asked. She says it's not healthy for a man my age to be so dependent on his mother. Dependent. When he'd been living in my pool house rent-free for 2 years. But I bit my tongue, because that's what mothers do. We swallow our words and hope our children come to their senses. Sometimes hope isn't enough. 2 weeks after the Jim meet cute story, David announced they were moving in together. Into the house I'd bought as an investment property 3 years ago. The house I'd let him live in, temporarily, while he got back on his feet after his last girlfriend cleaned out his savings account. It'll be perfect. Mom, David had said, pacing my kitchen while Jessica sat quietly, that serene smile never leaving her face. Jessica loves the place, and we can really start building our life together. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Have you thought about when you might want to take over the mortgage payments? His face had fallen. We're family. Can't we work something out? We have worked something out. For 2 years. Jessica had reached across the table and touched my hand. Maggie, I hope you don't think I'm pushing David into anything. The last thing I want is to come between you and your son. The last thing she wanted. Right. Of course not, dear. I'm just practical about business matters. Maybe we could do a gradual transition? Jessica suggested. Start with David paying utilities, then work up to partial mortgage payments. I'd hate for him to feel overwhelmed by paying his own bills. At 32. That's very thoughtful of you. David had visibly relaxed. See? I told you Jessica would understand. She's great at finding solutions. I bet she was. Within a month, they'd moved into what David now called our house. Jessica had redecorated, throwing out furniture that didn't match their aesthetic and replacing it with pieces that looked expensive but probably weren't. The utility bills stopped coming to me. The mortgage payments didn't start. When I'd called David about it, Jessica had answered his phone. Oh, hi Maggie. David's in the shower. Is everything okay? Just checking on the house payments we discussed. Right. We've been meaning to talk to you about that. Money's been a little tight with all the moving expenses and Jessica's career transition. We were hoping we could start fresh next month. We. Like they were some established entity instead of 2 people who'd known each other for 4 months. Of course. Next month will be fine. Next month came and went. So did the month after that. When I drove by the house one afternoon, I saw a brand new BMW in the driveway. David's old Honda was nowhere to be seen. I called him that evening. Mom, what's up? Nice car, David. Silence. Then, how do you know about the car? I own the house, remember? I drive by occasionally to check on my investment. That's kind of weird, Mom. Weird. Checking on property I owned was weird. Jessica needed reliable transportation for her new business, he continued. We got a great deal. How wonderful. Speaking of deals, when might you start contributing to the mortgage? Look, Mom, we need to talk. Jessica. Well, we both think you're being a little controlling about the money stuff. Controlling. For wanting my 32-year-old son to pay his own bills. I see. It's just that you use the house as leverage, like you're holding it over our heads. Jessica says that's not healthy family dynamics. Jessica says. Everything was Jessica says now. You're right, David. We should definitely talk about healthy family dynamics. Good. I'm glad you're open to feedback. Jessica's really good at this stuff. It's what she did professionally. Yes, it was. And I was starting to understand exactly what Jessica was good at. The conversation with David happened on a Tuesday. By Friday, I was sitting in my lawyer's office. "Margaret, are you certain about this?" Thomas Hartwell had been our family attorney for 15 years. He'd handled Robert's will, helped me navigate the insurance claims, drafted David's rental agreement for the pool house. Absolutely certain. Both properties? Both. The house on Maple Street and the beach house in Monterey. Thomas leaned back in his leather chair. "May I ask what precipitated this decision?" I could have told him about Jessica's whispered conversation at the wedding that hadn't happened yet. I could have explained about the BMW and the unpaid bills and the way my son now spoke to me like I was an inconvenience. Instead, I said, "I'm 63 years old, Thomas. I want to simplify my portfolio. These are significant assets, Margaret. The beach house alone is worth over $2 million, which is why I want them liquidated properly, discreetly." Thomas nodded slowly. "I assume David doesn't know about this?" "David assumes many things. That's part of the problem. He'll be entitled to notification as your heir, of course. Not if I'm not dead. He won't. Both properties are in my name alone. I can do whatever I want with them. Legally, yes. But Margaret, think about the family implications. I thought about Jessica's laugh when she'd told her friend about having me committed. I thought about David calling me controlling for expecting him to pay his own mortgage. I thought about 40 years of sacrificing for a child who now saw me as an obstacle to his happiness. Thomas, what do you think about people who bite the hand that feeds them? I think they shouldn't be surprised when the feeding stops." "Exactly. How long for the sales to go through? If we price them right and you're not particular about maximizing profit, we could close on both within 60 days. "Perfect. Price them to sell quickly. I want clean, fast transactions." Thomas made notes on his legal pad. "Where would you like the proceeds deposited?" "New account. Different bank. I'll give you the details next week." "And David? What about David? When will you tell him?" I thought about that for a moment, about timing and consequences, and the satisfaction of watching someone who'd taken you for granted discover exactly what they'd lost. "I'll tell him when he needs to know." Thomas raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. We'd known each other long enough for him to recognize my stubborn streak. "One more thing, Thomas. I want you to research something for me." "Of course." Jessica Morrison, 28 years old, used to work in social services. I want to know everything. Employment history, background, any legal issues. Any particular reason? Call it maternal instinct. Thomas made another note. "I'll have something for you by next week." I left his office feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because I was selling the properties. Those sales would hurt, especially the beach house, but because I was finally taking action instead of just reacting. Jessica wanted to play games with a helpless old lady. She was about to learn I wasn't nearly as helpless as she thought. The call came on a Thursday morning in October. David's voice was higher than usual, tight with panic. "Mom, we need to talk, now." "Good morning to you too, sweetheart. How are you?" "Don't. Can you come over? Jessica's at work." "So we can talk privately." Interesting. Privately meant without Jessica's supervision. "I'll be right there." I drove to Maple Street slowly, savoring what I knew would be my last visit to the house as its owner. The BMW was gone from the driveway, but David's new truck, another recent purchase he definitely couldn't afford, sat gleaming in the morning sun. David opened the door before I could knock. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "We got a notice," he said without preamble. "The house is being sold. They want us out in 30 days. "How strange. Who's selling it?" "Very funny, Mom. You know exactly who's selling it." I walked past him into the living room. Jessica had redecorated again since my last visit. Everything was white and gray now, sterile as a hospital. "I'm afraid I don't understand your tone, David." "Cut the act. You sold our house." "I sold my house. There's a difference." David stared at me like I'd grown another head. "This is our home. Mom, we've been living here for months. We've built a life here. On my dime. We were going to start paying the mortgage. We just needed more time. 6 months wasn't enough time? We had expenses. The wedding, Jessica's business startup costs, the cars. The cars, plural. How many cars do 2 people need?" "David," he ran his hands through his hair. "That's not the point. The point is, you can't just kick us out without warning." "Actually, I can. Check your lease agreement." "What lease agreement?" I pulled the document from my purse. "The one you signed when you moved in. 30 days notice for termination. Thomas had you sign it, remember? David's face went pale as he read. I thought this was just a formality. Family paperwork. All contracts are formalities until someone breaks them. We didn't break anything. You stopped paying rent after the first month. You bought luxury cars while stiffing me on utilities. And according to my research, Jessica's been telling people she owns this house. That last part was a guess, but the way David's eyes shifted told me I'd hit the mark. She was just, people ask questions when you're not on the deed. She was trying to avoid awkward conversations. By lying. By protecting our privacy. I folded the lease and put it back in my purse. Where is Jessica today, David? At her new office. She's launching her wellness coaching business. With what money? She has investors. Do these investors know she's been living rent-free for 6 months? Mom, you're being ridiculous. We're family. Family helps each other. You're right. Family does help each other. Tell me, when was the last time you helped me with anything? I help you all the time. When? We have dinner together. When I cook and you eat. I help with your technology issues. You've never fixed anything technological for me in your life. I provide emotional support by telling me I'm controlling, by canceling our lunch dates, by screening my calls through your girlfriend. David slumped onto Jessica's pristine white couch. This isn't fair, Mom. We're getting married. We need stability. Then get jobs that provide it. We have jobs. Jessica has a startup with mysterious investors, and you have a part-time consulting gig that barely covers your truck payment. That's not employment, David. That's wishful thinking. So you're punishing us for not being rich enough for you? The accusation stung because it was so backwards. I'm protecting myself from people who see me as a bank account instead of a person. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you called to ask how I was doing? Not to ask for money or to complain about my behavior, but just to check on your mother? David opened his mouth, then closed it. Exactly. You'll figure something out, sweetheart. You're creative when you need to be. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and David? The beach house is sold too. In case Jessica was counting on that for her retirement fund. The sound of him calling my name followed me all the way to my car. I didn't hear from David for 3 weeks. Then Jessica called. Maggie, we need to talk. No pleasantries, no fake warmth. Interesting. Hello, Jessica. How are you settling into your new place? We're staying with my sister temporarily. This situation is unacceptable. I'm sorry to hear you're having housing difficulties. Don't play games with me. You know exactly what you've done. Finally, the real Jessica. I've sold 2 pieces of property that belong to me. I'm not sure why that concerns you. Those properties were David's inheritance. David's inheritance will be what I leave him when I die. Since I'm not dead, he gets nothing. You can't just cut your son out of your life because he fell in love. I'm not cutting him out because he fell in love. I'm cutting him out because he chose a manipulative gold digger over his mother. Silence. Then, you bitter old woman. There it was. The mask completely off. I may be old, Jessica, but I'm not bitter. Bitter people don't take action. They just complain. David deserves better than this. You're right. He deserves a mother who raised him to be independent and grateful. Unfortunately, I failed at that. This isn't over, Maggie. Oh, I think it is. Unless you have something else to say? Actually, I do. David's been really struggling since you kicked us out. He's been forgetting things, getting confused, having mood swings. I'm worried about his mental health. My blood chilled. What kind of things is he forgetting? Conversations we've had. Appointments, where he put things. Yesterday he couldn't remember how to get to the grocery store we've been shopping at for months. That's concerning. Have you suggested he see a doctor? I think the whole family needs professional help. This dynamic between you two isn't healthy, Maggie. The way you're isolating him, manipulating him with money, it's textbook emotional abuse. Is it now? I deal with these situations professionally. I know the signs. And what do you recommend? Family therapy, with someone who specializes in elder care and family dysfunction. Elder care, like I was some confused old bat who needed managing. That's very thoughtful of you, Jessica. I'll consider it. Good. I'll send you some referrals. Doctors who really understand the complexities of aging and family relationships. I'm sure you will. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about chess games and strategic moves. Jessica was positioning her pieces, building a narrative. Confused son, isolated from manipulative mother, elder abuse, mental health concerns. She was good, very good, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd warned me what was coming. The intervention happened on a Tuesday morning in November. I was making coffee when I heard cars in my driveway. Through the window, I saw David's truck, a sedan I didn't recognize, and a white van. The doorbell rang. David stood on my porch with Jessica, a woman in scrubs and a man in a suit. "Mom, we need to talk." "Good morning, everyone. This is quite a crowd for a Tuesday." The man in the suit stepped forward. "Mrs. Cooper, I'm Dr. Franklin from Serenity Springs Mental Health Facility. Your family has expressed concerns about your welfare." How thoughtful of them. Jessica moved closer. "Maggie, we're here because we love you." David told Dr. Franklin about the concerning behaviors you've been exhibiting. "Such as?" David wouldn't meet my eyes. "The property sales, Mom. Liquidating major assets without any logical reason. Making impulsive financial decisions." "I see. And this concerns you because?" "Because it's not normal." David's voice cracked. "You sold our homes, Mom. You left us with nowhere to live. That's not rational behavior." Dr. Franklin consulted his clipboard. "Mrs. Cooper, are you currently taking any medications?" "Just vitamins." "Any recent changes in sleep patterns, appetite, or mood?" "I sleep fine, eat well, and my mood has actually improved considerably." "Your son mentioned you've become isolated, cutting off family relationships." "I've become selective about who I spend time with." The woman in scrubs stepped forward. "Mrs. Cooper, I'm Nurse Patricia. We're here to help. Sometimes as we age, we don't recognize changes in our own behavior." "How old are you, Patricia?" That's not relevant. "I'm 63. How old are you?" 34. "So you're going to explain aging to someone who's been doing it 30 years longer than you?" Franklin cleared his throat. "Mrs. Cooper, your family has provided documentation of concerning incidents. Forgetfulness, confusion, inappropriate financial decisions." "What documentation?" Jessica pulled out her phone. "I've been recording some of our conversations, Maggie. The things you've said, they're not rational. May I hear these recordings?" "This isn't a trial, Mom," David said. "We're trying to help you. By ambushing me with strangers? By getting you the care you need," Jessica said firmly. "Dr. Franklin can evaluate you properly. Make sure you're safe." "Safe from what?" "From yourself. From making decisions that hurt you and everyone who loves you." I looked at my son, my baby boy, who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd cried when I dropped him off at kindergarten, who'd called me his best friend until Jessica came along. "David, look at me." He finally met my eyes. "Do you really believe I'm mentally incompetent?" "I believe you need help, Mom, and I believe Jessica knows how to get it for you." "I see." I turned to Dr. Franklin. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A 72-hour evaluation period. We'll run some tests, do some assessments, determine the best course of treatment. And if I refuse? Your family can petition for an emergency commitment if they believe you're a danger to yourself or others." I looked around the group. Jessica's expression was sympathetic, but determined. David looked miserable, but resolute. Dr. Franklin seemed bored, like this was just another Tuesday morning pickup. "How much is this evaluation costing?" "Insurance typically covers." "I don't have insurance that covers psychiatric facilities." "Who's paying for this?" David shifted uncomfortably. "We'll figure that out, Mom." "With what money? You can't afford rent." "The important thing is getting you help," Jessica said. "Right. Help that someone else would pay for." "Fine," I said. "Let me pack a bag." Relief flooded David's face. "Thank you." "Mom, this is the right thing." "I'm sure it is, sweetheart." I went upstairs to pack, and while I threw clothes into a suitcase, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Thomas. "It's happening," I said. "Are you certain you want to go through with this?" "Positive. Remember what we discussed. If I'm not back in contact within a week, execute everything. Consider it done." The second call was to my bank. "I need to access my safety deposit box this afternoon." "Yes, I understand visiting hours are limited. This is an emergency." The third call was to someone Jessica probably didn't know existed, someone who'd been very interested in my previous conversation about background checks. "Detective Morrison, it's Maggie Cooper. I think it's time we had that conversation about your sister." Serenity Springs Mental Health Facility looked exactly like what it was, a place where inconvenient people got stored. Clean, institutional, with motivational posters that fooled no one. Doctor Franklin handed me off to a different doctor, Dr. Patricia Summers, who looked young enough to be my granddaughter. Mrs. Cooper, I'll be conducting your evaluation. I understand your family is concerned about some recent behavioral changes? My family is concerned about their meal ticket disappearing. Dr. Summers made a note. Tell me about your relationship with your son. Which version? The son I raised, or the stranger who's trying to have me committed? You seem angry. Wouldn't you be? Mrs. Cooper, anger can sometimes be a symptom of underlying cognitive issues, especially in patients your age. Patience. I was already a patient. Dr. Summers, how long have you been practicing? 5 years. And how many family financial disputes have you seen disguised as mental health crises? I'm not sure what you mean. I think you do. She made another note. Let's try some cognitive assessments. Can you tell me what year it is? 2025. And who's the president? Donald Trump. Unfortunately. Do you know where you are? In a facility where my son's girlfriend is trying to have me declared incompetent so they can control my money. Mrs. Cooper, paranoid thoughts. Dr. Summers, have you reviewed Jessica Morrison's employment history? I'm not familiar with... She worked in social services. Specifically, she worked in adult protective services, evaluating elderly people for competency. She knows exactly how this system works. Dr. Summers stopped writing. How do you know that? Because I'm not paranoid. I'm prepared. Over the next 2 days, I submitted to their tests. Memory assessments, cognitive evaluations, psychological profiles. I answered their questions honestly and completely. I also made friends. Nurse Angela had been working at Serenity Springs for 15 years. She'd seen every kind of family drama, every type of manipulation. Honey, she told me while checking my blood pressure, I've seen this movie before. Pretty girl, older man with money, family members who suddenly develop concerns. How does it usually end? Depends on how smart the target is. Most of the time, families get what they want. Old person gets medicated into compliance. Assets get redistributed. Most of the time? Angela smiled. Sometimes the old person turns out to be smarter than everyone thought. Hypothetically, what would a smart old person do? Hypothetically, she'd document everything. Every conversation, every test, every interaction. She'd request copies of her medical records. She'd make sure someone on the outside knew exactly what was happening. Smart advice. I've got 30 years until retirement. Mrs. Cooper, I see a lot of injustice and I can't fix most of it, but sometimes I can help the right person fix themselves. On my 3rd day, Angela brought me a manila envelope. This came for you. Legal mail. Inside was everything Thomas had promised. Jessica's complete employment history, including 3 previous jobs that had ended with allegations of elder abuse, 2 civil suits that had been quietly settled, and most importantly, a criminal background check that showed a conviction for fraud in Nevada 5 years ago. There was also a handwritten note from Detective Morrison. Mrs. Cooper, Jessica is my half-sister. I've been trying to build a case against her for years. Your situation might be exactly what we need. Call me when you get out. I folded the papers carefully and handed them to Angela. Would you mind keeping these safe for me? Of course, hypothetically speaking. When might you need them back? Tomorrow morning. I have a feeling I'm about to be declared competent. Angela smiled. Funny how that works. Dr. Summers delivered the news with obvious reluctance. Mrs. Cooper, I've completed your evaluation. While you show signs of stress and some concerning decision-making patterns, I don't see evidence of cognitive impairment or mental illness that would require continued treatment. How surprising. However, I do think family counseling would be beneficial. The dynamics between you and your son seem complex. I'm sure they do. Your son and Jessica are here to take you home. Home. To the house Jessica probably thought she was about to inherit. David hugged me in the lobby, but it felt forced, performative. I'm so glad you're okay, Mom. We were really worried. Were you? Jessica stood beside him, that perfect smile back in place. Welcome back, Maggie. I hope you're feeling better. Much better. Thank you. In David's truck, Jessica turned to face me from the front seat. Maggie, I think we all learned something from this experience. Communication is so important in families. I couldn't agree more. I was thinking maybe we could have dinner tonight? Start fresh? That sounds lovely. Why don't you both come to my house around 7? David glanced at Jessica. Are you sure you're up for cooking? Oh, I won't be cooking. I'm ordering in, from that new place downtown. Great, Jessica said. We'll bring wine. Perfect. They dropped me off at my house with promises to see me soon. I waved from my porch until they drove away, then went inside and made phone calls. The first was to Detective Morrison. I'm out. When can we meet? How about right now? I'll bring backup. The second was to Thomas. Execute everything. Tonight. Are you certain? Absolutely. And Thomas? Make sure the process server knows they'll be at my house at 7. The third was to Angela at Serenity Springs. I need copies of everything from my file. Every note, every test result, every conversation. Already copied and sealed. I'll drop them by this afternoon. The fourth was to the catering company downtown. I need dinner for 8 people delivered at 6:30. Something impressive. Money's no object. I spent the afternoon reviewing documents and preparing. At 6:30, enough food for a small army arrived. At 6:45, Detective Morrison and 2 other officers pulled into my driveway in unmarked cars. At 7 o'clock exactly, David and Jessica knocked on my door. Come in, I called. There are some people I'd like you to meet. The look on Jessica's face when she saw Detective Morrison was worth every penny this had cost me. Hello, Jess, he said. Been a while. David looked confused. Mom, what's going on? Who are these people? David. Meet Detective Morrison, Jessica's half-brother. Jessica's perfect composure cracked. Danny, what are you doing here? My job, Detective Morrison replied. Mrs. Cooper, would you like to tell them? Or should I? I'll handle it. I turned to David. Jessica has done this before. 3 times that we know of. She targets men with wealthy family members, manipulates them into cutting off their families, then orchestrates mental health crises to gain control of assets. That's ridiculous, David said. But his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Detective Morrison, would you share what you found? Jessica Morrison, also known as Jessica Wells and Jessica Martinez, has been under investigation for elder fraud in 3 states. She was convicted in Nevada 5 years ago for bilking an 80-year-old man out of his pension. David stared at Jessica. Is that true? It's complicated, Jessica said. That case was... There were misunderstandings. What about Margaret Thornfield in Arizona? Detective Morrison continued. 83 years old, committed to a facility after her nephew's girlfriend convinced him his aunt was incompetent. The aunt who died in that facility 3 months later. After signing over her estate? That was different, Jessica whispered. Or Harold Brennan in Colorado. 76, isolated from his family, committed after his son's fiancée documented his declining mental state. He's still in a facility, by the way. Been there 2 years. David sank into my couch. This can't be real. I'm afraid it is, sweetheart. I sat beside him. The engagement ring she's wearing? It belonged to Margaret Thornfield. Jessica kept it as a trophy. Jessica's hand instinctively went to the ring. You don't understand. These people were being taken advantage of by their families. I was protecting them. By stealing their money? By ensuring they got proper care. In facilities where they died alone while you spent their life savings? David looked at the ring on Jessica's finger, then at his girlfriend of 8 months. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? David, you're letting your mother poison your mind against me. She researched me, didn't she? I asked Detective Morrison. Before she approached David? We found extensive files on your family, Mrs. Cooper. Financial records, property ownership, your husband's obituary, David's employment history. She knew exactly what she was walking into. David stood up slowly. You targeted me. This whole relationship, you targeted my family. David, please. I love you. You love my inheritance. That's not true. Detective Morrison stepped forward. Jessica Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, falsifying medical documentation, and elder abuse. As he read her rights, Jessica finally dropped the act completely. You think you've won? She snarled at me. Your son will never forgive you for this. You've destroyed his life just to prove you're smarter than me. No, I said quietly. I've saved his life. And my own. David watched silently as they led Jessica away. When the police cars disappeared, he turned to me. "Mom, I am so sorry. I know you are, sweetheart. How can you ever forgive me?" I thought about that question for a long moment. About trust and betrayal. About love and disappointment. About the difference between forgiving and forgetting. "David, I forgave you the moment you realized what had happened. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending this didn't hurt." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because I need to know that you understand how close we came to losing everything. Not just money, everything." David nodded, tears in his eyes. "She almost destroyed us." "Yes, she did. And you helped her. I thought I was protecting her from you. She made me believe, God, Mom, she made me believe you were the problem." That's what people like Jessica do. They're very good at it. "How do we fix this?" I looked at my son, really looked at him for the first time in months. He looked older, tired, like he'd been carrying a weight he was finally able to put down. "We start over, slowly, with honesty. And the houses are sold. I'm keeping the money." David winced but nodded. "I deserve that." "Yes, you do. But David?" "Yeah? When you're ready to rebuild your life, your real life, not some fantasy Jessica sold you, I'll be here to help." "Why?" "Because despite everything, you're still my son. And mothers don't give up on their children, even when their children give up on them." 6 months later, I was sitting on the deck of my new beachfront condo, watching the sunset paint the Pacific in shades of gold and pink. The place was smaller than the house I'd sold, but it was mine, and it was peaceful. David had called that morning to tell me about his new job, real employment this time, with a steady salary and health insurance. He'd moved into a small apartment, was seeing a therapist, and had started paying back the money Jessica had spent using his credit cards. "I'm proud of you," I'd told him. "I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying." "I know you are." We had dinner once a month now. Awkward at first, but getting easier. Trust would take time to rebuild, but we were working on it. Jessica had been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Detective Morrison said it should have been longer, but plea bargains were part of the system. She'd also been ordered to pay restitution to her previous victims, though most of them would never see their money again. The best part was hearing that Harold Brennan had been released from his facility and reunited with his family. Sometimes justice came slowly, but it came. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Cooper, this is Sarah Chen. Detective Morrison gave me your number. I think my stepmother might be doing to my father what Jessica did to you. Could we talk?" I smiled and typed back, "Of course. When would you like to meet?" People often asked me if I regretted how things turned out, if I wished I'd handled it differently, been more understanding, given Jessica more chances. The answer was simple: no. I'd learned something important over the past year. Being a mother doesn't mean being a doormat. Loving your children doesn't mean accepting abuse. And being 63 doesn't mean being helpless. Jessica had seen an easy target, a lonely widow who'd do anything to keep her son happy. She'd been half right. I was a widow, and I did love my son. But I wasn't lonely, and I definitely wasn't easy. The sun dipped below the horizon, and I raised my glass of wine in a silent toast. To mothers everywhere who'd learned the difference between love and enablement. To children who'd found their way back home. And to second chances, which sometimes came disguised as endings. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Sarah Chen, and we'd figure out how to protect her father from his predatory stepmother. Next week, I'd have dinner with David, and we'd continue rebuilding what Jessica had tried to destroy. Tonight, I'd sit on my deck and enjoy the peace that came from knowing exactly who I was and what I was worth. Being a mother means loving unconditionally, but it also means knowing when to stop feeding the hand that bites you. Some lessons are worth learning, no matter how much they cost. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.